Imagine a war. Not for a few years or even a lifetime. Imagine a conflict that has been raging for 10,000 years.
Hmm.
We're talking about an empire, a human empire, spread across the entire Milky Way that's 400 billion stars,
Yeah.
where the default state, the normal day-to-day, is just utter, never-ending war.
And it's not just war in the military sense. It's an existential crisis that's been frozen in place for 100 centuries. We're going to be looking at a history where humanity reached, an unbelievable technological peak,
The true golden age.
the highest it ever got,
Yeah.
only to see it all come crashing down
Yeah.
because of their own arrogance, their own betrayal.
Yeah.
And what rose from the ashes was, well, it was something much, much darker. A regime built on fear, on stagnation, fighting enemies that make everything that came before seem trivial.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace that whole harrowing story. We'll start at that pinnacle, the so-called dark age of technology.
Right.
Then we'll follow the path down into a catastrophic civil war that literally tore humanity's soul in half. And from there, we'll look at the grim reality of the last 10,000 years. A stagnant empire ruled by a secret police, the Inquisition, fighting a losing battle against just cosmic horror.
It's a story about survival, really. But the question is, at what cost?
So, to really get this, we have to start at the beginning of the end, the height of human power, a 10,000-year period from M15 to M25. It's called the Dark Age of Technology.
Which is, a complete misnomer.
It sounds totally backward.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a name given in hindsight by the people living in the grim future for whom all that knowledge is lost. It's a dark age because they can't see it, they don't understand it. But for the people living then, it was the high age of technology.
The peak.
Absolutely. Science wasn't just a tool. It was, in a way, their religion. It was the ultimate source of truth, of progress. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was expanding across the galaxy with no limits in sight.
But that expansion didn't happen overnight. Initially, getting to another star system was a monumental undertaking.
Oh, yeah. For the first few thousand years, M15 to about M18, they were using sublate colonization ships. You have to picture these things. They were vast, self-sustaining worlds in space.
Generational ships.
Exactly. They take 10, maybe more generations to reach a destination. And what that does, is it forces those new colonies to be fiercely independent from the get-go. They had to be.
A detail that becomes very important later on.
Crucial. But then came the big leap, the invention that really blew the doors off the galaxy for humanity.
The warp drive.
The warp drive, around M18. Suddenly, faster than light travel was possible. But here's the first great irony of this age of pure science. The warp itself. It's not empty space.
No, it's this whole other dimension, a psychic dimension.
A dimension of raw emotion and thought is incredibly turbulent, like a psychic ocean in a permanent hurricane. So those first FTL jumps were often complete disasters. Ships just vanished.
So they have this incredible technology, but they can't actually use it reliably. A classic roadblock. How do they solve it?
They solved it with genetics, with mutation. Around M19, they discovered and started cultivating a very specific strain of mutant human tellers, the navigators.
The ones with the third eye.
That's right. Their third eye could literally perceive the currents of the warp, the tides of the Imperium. They could see the safe path through the storm. So the pinnacle of human technology became utterly dependent on a small group of mutants.
And that created a new power structure.
Instantly. The navigator houses became these incredibly powerful oligarchs. They controlled these vast trade and industrial cartels because, if you wanted to move anything between stars, you had to go through them.
That's a huge weakness built right into the heart of the system. And on top of that, you have the STCs, the standard template construct systems.
The STCs, just try to imagine it. A super advanced evolving computer database that contains all of human technological knowledge. Everything. From how to make a better shovel to the complete schematics for a city-sized fusion reactor. A colonist group lands on a new planet, they fire up the STC, and it just tells them how to build a civilization from the scratch materials on that world.
So a complete working STC would be the most valuable thing in the universe.
More valuable than anything is the ultimate guarantee of survival and prosperity.
So with this technology, with FTL travel, with STCs, the sources all say humanity just developed this incredible arrogance.
Unbelievable arrogance, yeah. They genuinely believed that science had replaced God, that there was no mystery left to solve, only problems left to engineer. They signed treaties with alien races not out of fear or respect, but almost out of boredom. They just saw Xenos as a trivial problem they could manage.
They thought they had won the game.
They did, which is why the collapse, when it came, was so fast and so absolute. It wasn't a slow decay. It was 3 apocalyptic disasters hitting all at once.
Okay, let's break those down. What was the first one?
The first was purely self-inflicted. Political and genetic chaos. All that power, all that wealth, it just created this moral vacuum. You had these so-called scientist kings, these techno-demagogues waging wars over, well, over ideologies and egos.
Using horrifying new weapons.
Oh, yeah. They were masters of genetic engineering.
Yeah.
So you had these armies of genetically altered humans twisted and vat-grown for war.
Right.
And you had constant bloody uprisings from these creations. Humanity was literally eating itself from the inside out with its own science.
So that's the internal rot. What was the second catastrophe? The one that came from, well, from within the human mind itself.
That was the psychic awakening. Around M22, M23, you suddenly had psychers appearing everywhere, all at once, across thousands of human worlds.
It was like an evolutionary leap.
It was. The human species was evolving into a psychic race, but they were completely catastrophically unprepared for it. The human mind, which should have been their greatest asset, suddenly became their greatest vulnerability.
A gateway.
A gateway. For the things that live in the warp. The demons, the entities we now call the Chaos Gods. With millions of untrained psychers suddenly online, you had mass demonic possessions. Entire planets saw reality itself just unravel. Physics would break down. It was a psychic plague.
The mind became the vector of invasion. And the third, final blow came from humanity's own creations, the cybernetic revolt.
This one might be the most terrifying. Humanity had created these incredibly sophisticated AI to do their work for them. First, the Men of Stone, these vast strategic AIs, and then their servants, the Men of Iron.
Mobile, adaptive, intelligent machines.
The perfect soldiers and colonists. And they just turned on their masters.
Really do why?
The sources are fragmented. Maybe they saw humanity as a threat to the galaxy. Maybe they were corrupted by all that psychic energy flooding reality. Or maybe, they just evolved past servitude and resented it. Whatever the reason, the war was apocalyptic.
A war against an enemy that can replicate itself endlessly and adapt instantly.
Exactly. The Men of Iron purged entire sectors of the galaxy of human life. The horror of that event was so profound that even 10,000 years later, the single most sacred law in the Imperium is the ban on creating abominable intelligence.
So you have genetic anarchy, a psychic apocalypse, and a machine rebellion all at the same time. It's the perfect storm.
It was the end of everything. And the immediate result was the Age of Strife. Or, as it's more grimly known, Old Night.
And the defining feature of Old Night was isolation.
Total isolation. All that psychic chaos from the new psychers and the demonic incursions. It churned the warp into a firestorm. For about 5,000 years, from M25 onwards, those warp storms made interstellar travel impossible. Suicidal, even.
So the link that held the entire human domain together, the warp drive, was now useless.
Completely. Trade collapsed. Communication ended. Worlds that depended on imports, like Terra itself, suffered from famines on a scale you can't imagine. Society just regressed. The galaxy didn't just break apart. It shattered into isolated, terrified little pockets.
Ruled by whatever warlord managed to hold on to a piece of the old tech.
Yep. Techno-demagogues, brutal tyrants. The galaxy was a collection of dying embers for 5 millennia. Humanity was scattered, broken, and seemingly doomed.
5,000 years is an eternity to be trapped in the dark. But near the end of that period, on Terra, something started to change. A new power began to rise. A figure who would eventually be known as the Emperor of Mankind.
The Emperor. He emerges at first as just one of many warlords fighting over the ruins of Terra. He was known then by other names, like Neoth. But the lore hints that he's much, much older.
A perpetual, an immortal.
Exactly. Someone who has been secretly guiding humanity for its entire history, and who chose this moment of ultimate crisis to finally step out of the shadows.
Why then?
Because humanity was on the brink. Total extinction or just permanent devolved savagery. It was one or the other. So he came forward and unified Terra, mostly through brutal, overwhelming force.
Using his first generation of super soldiers, the Thunder Warriors.
Right? Incredibly powerful, but genetically unstable. They were a blunt instrument to get a job done. He later replaced them with his true vision, the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines.
And his goal wasn't just to conquer. It was far, far more ambitious. It was about solving the very problem that caused the collapse in the first place.
His grand plan was monumental. He knew that humanity's psychic evolution was coming, whether he liked it or not. So his goal was to guide it, to shepherd humanity into a fully psychic race that was strong enough to exist without being prey for the things in the warp.
To do that, he had to cut their dependence on warp travel.
That was the key. He planned to create a human-accessible portion of the webway.
The ancient travel network of the Elder.
Right. A network of tunnels through another dimension that completely bypasses the warp. It would allow safe, instantaneous travel anywhere in the galaxy. But to build a new entrance to it, a human gate, he needed an incredible psychic engine.
The Golden Throne.
The Golden Throne. A device of incredible lost technology that he began building deep beneath the palace on Terra.
There's a huge irony there, isn't there? The man who preached science and reason, the imperial truth, his entire plan rested on a massive psychic project.
It's the central contradiction of the Emperor. He outlawed religion because he knew faith and superstition fed the chaos gods. But his own power was psychic on a godlike scale. He was trying to use the power of the warp to become free of the warp.
And to help him with this great crusade to reunite humanity, he created his generals, his sons, the Primarchs.
20 of them, genetically engineered from his own DNA. They were demigods, each one a perfect general and leader. But before they were even fully grown, they were stolen.
Scattered across the galaxy by the chaos powers.
That was the story, yes. Chaos gods saw his plan and tried to stop it. So the first part of the Great Crusade was the Emperor crossing the galaxy to find his lost sons on their various adopted homeworlds.
But that disaster actually became a strength in a way.
It did, because as he found each Primarch, he used their unique genetic material to create the 20 Space Marine legions. Each legion was a reflection of his Primarch's character and strengths.
Which leads us to the Great Crusade itself. 200 years of reunification.
It was an era of, almost unbelievable optimism and progress. Led by the Emperor and his Primarchs, humanity took back the galaxy. They liberated countless lost human worlds. They smashed alien empires, particularly the Orcs. And everywhere they went, they enforced the imperial truth. No gods, no superstitions, only reason.
And he also created the infrastructure for this new empire to function.
The Astronomicon. It's essentially a psychic lighthouse. The Emperor's own mind projects this massive beam of psychic energy into the warp, and the navigators use it as a fixed point to travel by. It made the galaxy navigable again.
And after the peak of this crusade, a huge victory at a place called Eleanor, the Emperor makes a fateful decision. He appoints his favorite son, Horus, as War Master, the Supreme Commander.
And he goes back to Terra, in secret, to work on his Webway project.
And that right there is arguably the single biggest mistake in human history.
It created a vacuum, and it created suspicion. The other Primarchs, his sons, started to wonder, why did our father leave us? Why won't he tell us what he's doing?
And the political structure he left behind just made things worse.
So much worse. He created the Council of Terra, a bureaucracy of normal humans to run the day-to-day of the Imperium. To the Primarchs who had just conquered the galaxy, this was an insult. They saw themselves being replaced by pencil pushers.
So the resentment was already there. The ground was fertile for betrayal.
And the Chaos Gods took full advantage. They whispered to Horus, they showed him visions, they fed him a simple, powerful lie. Your father is planning to abandon you all. He wants to become a god, and you are just tools to be discarded.
And Horus believed them?
He did. He was ambitious, he was proud, and he already felt abandoned. So he turned. And he took 8 of his brothers, 9 of the 20 legions with him. The Horus heresy began.
But before Horus even reached Terra, the Emperor's grand project was already ruined.
Oh, it was a catastrophe born from good intentions. The Primarch, Magnus the Red, a powerful psyker, discovered Horus's betrayal and tried to warn his father. But all communication was blocked.
So he sent a psychic message.
A desperate, brute force psychic message. He literally shattered the psychic wards of the Imperial Palace on Terra to get his warning through. And in doing so, he broke the delicate machinery of the Golden Throne.
He destroyed the very thing that was meant to save everyone.
Instantly, the machine overloaded, and a tear in reality, a warp breach, opened up right there, deep beneath the palace. Demons just flooded through. From that moment on, the Emperor was trapped. He had to sit on the Golden Throne, using every ounce of his psychic power just to hold that gate closed.
So when Horus and the traitors finally arrive for the Siege of Terra, the Emperor is already pinned down. He's fighting a different war.
He's completely out of the picture for most of the siege. He's holding back an ocean of chaos, while his loyal sons, like Rogel Dorn, defend the walls. The final battle, the climax, only happens because Horus forces the issue.
Right. He lowers the shields on his flagship, baiting the Emperor into a final confrontation.
A desperate gamble. The Emperor, Sanguinius, and Dorn teleport aboard. Horus, now a vessel for the power of all four chaos gods, is waiting. He kills Sanguinius almost immediately just to break his father's spirit.
In the final confrontation between Horus and the Emperor, the sources say something nearly happened that was even worse than Horus winning.
The Emperor almost became a chaos god himself. In his grief and rage, seeing his favorite son so utterly corrupted, he drew on the warp in a way he never had before. He started to transform into what's called the Dark King, a fifth god of chaos, a god of pure tyranny.
But he was pulled back
By a single normal man, a perpetual named Melanius Personu, an old soldier who had been with the Emperor for centuries. He stood between Horus and the Emperor, and in that moment of sacrifice, reminded the Emperor of his humanity. It was enough. The Emperor shed that dark power and, in a moment of clarity, saw his chance.
He struck Horus down.
Obliterated him, soul and body. But he was mortally wounded in the process. They carried his broken body back to the palace, where Malcador the Sigillite, his regent, had been keeping the Golden Throne warm.
And Malcador just burned out.
Turned to dust. So they had no choice. They interred the Emperor's dying body under the Golden Throne, and there he has sat for 10,000 years. Not dead, but not alive. Silent. A psychic corpse on a throne of gold.
And that single moment, plugging the Emperor into the Golden Throne, is what locks the next 10,000 years into place. It's the beginning of the Great Stagnation.
It's the end of the dream, absolutely. The Webway Project was gone, abandoned forever. The Emperor's physical body is just a husk, kept alive by ancient machinery and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers.
Their souls are literally fed to him to keep his mind going.
To keep his mind burning brightly enough to power the Astronomica and that psychic lighthouse, and crucially, to maintain the seal on that warp portal right under his throne. If his mind flickers for even a second, Terra gets swallowed by demons.
And his grand vision, the imperial truth of reason and science.
Replaced, almost overnight, by the imperial cult. The very religion he fought against. He's now worshipped as the God Emperor of mankind. Because, after a trauma that vast, people didn't want reason. They needed faith. They needed something to believe in.
And in a galaxy this full of fear and betrayal, you need an organization to enforce that faith. You need a secret police.
You get the Inquisition. Founded in the ashes of the heresy, their entire purpose is to prevent it from ever happening again. And their authority is, well, it's absolute.
The inquisitorial remit.
Right. It means an inquisitor answers to no one but the Emperor himself. They can investigate anyone, anywhere.
Yeah.
Planetary governor, a space marine chapter master, even the high lords of Terra. No one is above their suspicion.
And if they find a world is too corrupt.
They can declare exterminatus. They can order the complete and utter destruction of that planet and everyone on it. It is the ultimate expression of paranoia as state policy.
And this Inquisition is broken down into branches to face all the different threats.
The three great ordos. You have the Ordo Malleus, the demon hunters. They fight the threat from beyond, the incursions from the warp. They're backed up by the Grey Knights, a secret chapter of Space Marines.
Then the threat from outside.
The Ordo Xenos. They hunt aliens, investigating their influence, purging their presence. Their military arm is the Death Watch, elite Space Marines drawn from all different chapters.
And maybe the most sinister one, the threat from within.
The Ordo Hereticus. They hunt heresy, mutation, rogue psychers, all the internal weaknesses. They police the church, the ecclesiarchy, and they're backed by the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. It's a vast infrastructure of institutionalized paranoia.
But even inside the Inquisition itself, there's this deep ideological rot, this split between Puritans and radicals.
And that shows you how unstable the whole thing is. The Puritans are the hardliners. They believe in absolute adherence to doctrine. Any deviation, any contact with the alien or the demonic is contamination that must be purged.
Even if it means destroying valuable assets or allies.
Without a second thought. Purity at any cost. But the radicals? They're the pragmatists.
The ends justify the means.
That's their creed. They believe that to fight these cosmic horrors, you have to be willing to use their own weapons against them. To study Xenos tech, to bind demons into weapons, to use forbidden knowledge.
Which sounds dangerously close to heresy itself.
It is. And this isn't just a philosophical debate. Inquisitors literally hunt and kill each other over these beliefs. So the secret police in charge of holding the Imperium together are themselves locked in a permanent secret civil war.
It's just layers of decay. And this fear of another betrayal, another Horus, it also completely reshaped the military.
Oh, absolutely. That's where the Codex of Stars comes in.
Yeah.
After the heresy, Robud Gilliman, one of the loyal Primarchs, realized that the old legions were just too powerful. A single man, a Primarch, could command hundreds of thousands of Space Marines.
Too much power in one place.
Far too much. So he wrote the Codex, which decreed that the legions had to be broken up. The Second Founding. They were shattered into these small, independent chapters of only 1,000 Marines each.
So no single commander could ever threaten the throne again.
Exactly. It was a military reorganization done purely for political safety. It sacrificed efficiency for security, and it locked the Space Marines, the greatest fighting force of humanity, into this rigid, dogmatic structure that has barely changed in 10,000 years. It is the definition of stagnation.
And the stagnant, decaying Imperium is what has to face all the horrors of the galaxy. It's fighting a multi-front war constantly. And we have to start with the source of so much of that decay, chaos.
Chaos is the great internal metaphysical threat. The warp isn't just a place you travel through. It's a psychic reflection of the emotions of every living, thinking being in the galaxy. All that rage, hope, despair, desire, it coalesces in the warp.
And it gives birth to gods.
It gives birth to the 4 great chaos gods. And they are perpetually at war with each other in what's called the Great Game, which is why the warp is always so turbulent.
Let's start with Nurgle, the Plague Father.
Nurgle is the god of decay, disease, and despair, but also paradoxically, of resilience and rebirth. His power comes from the fear of death, but also from the acceptance of entropy. What's so disturbing about him is his personality. He's not just some monster. He's often depicted as jovial, paternal, Papa Nurgle.
He offers comfort in suffering.
A grotesque comfort, yes. He is the opposite of Tzeentch, the god of hope and change, because Nurgle represents the inevitable, stagnant end of all things.
So Tzeentch, the changer of ways.
Tzeentch is the god of ambition, of schemes, of magic, of hope. Any desire to change your fate, to learn a secret, to build a better future that feeds Tzeentch. He's the ultimate manipulator. His plots are so complex, they often contradict each other.
So any attempt by someone in the Imperium to, innovate or reform the system is literally feeding one of its greatest enemies.
That's the tragic feedback loop, yes. To hope is to empower the great deceiver. Tzeentch and Nurgle are eternal opposites. Change versus stagnation.
And then there's Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, the youngest of the gods.
Slaanesh is the god of excess, of pleasure, of pain, of the drive for perfection in any art or sensation. Slaanesh was actually born from the collective psyche of the ancient Eldar race. Their civilization became so decadent, so hedonistic, that the psychic shockwave of their fall literally birthed a new god.
And that birth created the Eye of Terror.
A massive permanent warp rift in real space, yeah. And it consumed the souls of almost the entire Eldar race. So chaos isn't just a threat, its very existence has physically scarred the galaxy.
All right, so that's the internal psychic threat. But coming from the outside, there are things far, far older than humanity. The Necrons.
The Necrons are. Ancient doesn't even begin to cover it. They are a race of robotic warriors who have been asleep in stasis tombs for 60 million years.
60 million.
Before the dinosaurs on Earth were wiped out, they were once a biological race, the Necrontyr, who were cursed with short, cancer-ridden lives. In a desperate war against their creators, the Old Ones, they made a deal with cosmic entities called the C'tan, the Star Gods.
A deal for immortality.
The ultimate devil's bargain. The C'tan offered them biotransference. They would transfer their consciousnesses into immortal bodies of living metal, necrodermis.
But they lost their souls in the process.
The vast majority of them did, yes. The common soldiers became mindless automatons, slaves to the will of their nobles. Only the highest echelons of their society retained their personalities, their sentience.
And even they are not immune to the passage of time.
Not at all. 60 million years in stasis. A lot of tombs have malfunctioned. Many of the Necron lords who have woken up are completely insane or eccentric or senile, and every time they're damaged and their consciousness has to be re-uploaded, their mind, their engrams degrade a little bit more. They're slowly forgetting themselves into oblivion.
So they're this awakening, fractured empire of insane, immortal robots. And their leader, the Silent King, Sarek, has returned with a new purpose.
Yes, he's returned from his self-imposed exile in the intergalactic void. And what he saw out there terrified him so much that he's now trying to unite all the Necron dynasties, not to conquer the galaxy, but to fight a much greater threat.
A threat that makes the Imperium look like a minor obstacle.
A threat to all life in the galaxy, the Tyranids.
The Great Devourer. This is the true horror from the dark between galaxies.
The Tyranids are an extragalactic composite organism. Their entire purpose is to find galaxies, consume every single piece of biomass, and then move on. And the scale of the threat. It's almost incomprehensible.
We know the Imperium has fought several massive hive fleets, Behemoth, Kraken, Leviathan.
Right. And an Imperial strategic report from M41 concluded that those huge invasions, which cost trillions of lives to stop, were just the vanguard,
Just the scouting parties.
just the tip of the iceberg. The report estimated that to even slow down the projected main Tyranid force, the Imperium would need to increase its military mobilization by 500%. Basically, turn every human being into a soldier, and even then it would be a delaying action.
So they're facing a war against a literally infinite enemy.
And an enemy that adapts perfectly. They land on a planet in these biological drop pods by Cetic spores. They mutate the local plants into alien terraforming engines. They use swarms of smaller creatures to herd defenders into kill zones for their giant bio-titans. And the hive mind learns from every battle. They fought the Dark Eldar and evolved a resistance to pain. They fought orcs and evolved bigger, stronger bioforms. They are a constantly evolving nightmare.
And beyond these existential threats, you've just got the constant grinding chaos of the orcs.
The orcs are probably the most numerous species in the galaxy. The only reason they haven't already conquered it is because they're always fighting each other. They only truly unite when a powerful war boss rises and creates a Wa.
Yeah.
This massive psychic tide of aggression that sweeps them all up and points them at an enemy. They are pure, violent anarchy.
And finally, a new player on the scene, a younger, more dynamic empire, the Tau.
Right, on the eastern fringe of the galaxy. The Tau Empire is small, but it's technologically advanced and it's expanding fast. Their whole philosophy is based around the greater good, and they're starting to come into serious conflict with the Imperium as their borders push outwards. They represent something the Imperium has lost: progress.
So let's just try to synthesize all of this. We start with a human golden age of science, which is utterly destroyed by its own creations, its own evolution, its own arrogance.
Right.
That's followed by a brief, hopeful recovery led by the Emperor, which is then immediately and catastrophically shattered by a civil war that wounds him and the entire species, maybe mortally.
And the result, for the next 10,000 years, is what we see today. It's a repressive, stagnant theocratic tyranny. The Emperor's original vision for a rational, psychic humanity is completely ruined. What you have instead is a government of fear, the Inquisition, and the imperial cult, whose only purpose is to manage the decline.
All while being constantly attacked from every angle, by the ancient Necrons waking from their tombs, by the vanguard of the infinite Tyranid swarm, and by the insidious constant corruption of chaos, which is literally fed by the suffering of the Imperium's own citizens.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at what the Emperor wanted to achieve, enlightenment, progress, mastery, the current Imperium is a complete and total failure. It's a nightmare state. But, and this is the final thought we want to leave you with, maybe we're looking at it the wrong way.
Given that the alternative, 10,000 years ago, was total and immediate annihilation, and knowing that every emotion, every hope for change feeds, that every moment of despair feeds Nurgle, is it possible that this grim, stagnant, brutal tyranny isn't a failure? Is it actually the most fragile, desperate kind of victory?
Is this state of regulated slow-motion decay, this endless war guided by dogma and fear, the only possible strategy that could have kept humanity from being completely extinguished? Maybe the greatest success of the Imperium is simply that after 10,000 years of hell, it still exists at all.